Good morning. Today I'd like to think a little bit about the tragedy of Parshat Noach, which begins and ends with two stories where God chooses to punish humanity. The question, "Am I my brother's keeper?" found in last week's Parsha resonates through our history and tradition. Its value of compassion and obligations to other human beings, and ultimately to all of God's creation, is at the root of many of our great principles, especially the one most often quoted, love your neighbor as yourself, v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. Indeed, Hillel tells us that this fundamental obligation of love is Torah's essence, that all the rest is commentary. Sadly, it is far easier to command compassion for others than to follow through and act with this compassion. Our ancient rabbis see failures of compassion at the root of many of the great tragic stories, such as the flood and the Tower of Babel found in this week's Parsha. Unlike other universal flood stories of the ancient Near East, our flood story is unambiguous in its moral content. God destroys the world because it is too evil to survive. The Torah teaches that the earth was filled with violence. Our ancient rabbis fill the lacunae of what this violence was, explaining that it was full of human injustice, lawlessness, and social unrighteousness. There was no compassion towards other humans or to the creatures that fill the world. Indeed, one midrash suggests that a hunter would chop off the leg of an animal that he was hunting or she was hunting and leave it to suffer and die. This cruelty was expressed not only by humans, but actually, according to the midrash, extended to the animal kingdom as well. Only Noah and his family, though far from perfect, had the basic compassion necessary to rebuild the world and human society. They were the only ones who understood that yes is always the answer to, am I my brother's keeper? The story of the Great Tower, coming at the conclusion of the Parsha, and narratively fairly soon after the flood, can be understood as demonstrating the continuing human failure to learn compassion, even after the universal destruction. The story seems to a degree inexplicable. Hoping to remain together and make a name for themselves, the people build a great tower. This action angers God to such an extent that human language is diversified. For the rabbis, 70 different languages are created, thus creating mass confusion, leading to the destruction of the tower and the subsequent spread of humanity across the globe as homeless refugees. This text is far from simple, opening itself to numerous explanations for God's anger. Some focus on idolatry and others on arrogance or hubris. Here I want to focus on a single midrash. Our ancient rabbis suggest the tower was built of substantial cut stones, so large that it took many people to carry them. Though there was a multitude of laborers available, as the tower grew, it became a lengthy process of up to a year to bring a single stone to the scaffolding at the top of the tower. Therefore, if a single stone were dropped off the tower or damaged during the ascent, the people would mourn, lamenting that it would take another year for replacement to reach the top. But if one of the laborers fell off, no one wept, because many would replace those who died. The Midrash suggests that this failure of necessary compassion and care impelled God to confuse human language to prevent the tower's completion. Here again, we're reminded how few answer yes when we ask, am I my brother or sister's keeper? Parshat Noach's vision of human dystopias is mitigated to a degree at the end as the Torah's focus shifts to the family of Abraham and Sarai in this context. Though humanly imperfect, they are exemplars of compassion, courage, and responsibility, as we'll see in many of the stories told of them next week. As lights unto the nation, their prime role will be to help humanity understand that the answer to the question, am I my brother or sister's keeper, always must be yes. Shabbat Shalom.